Hello and welcome to The Essential Reads. My name is Isaac and my goal is to bring to you a bunch of classic audiobooks in an easy and accessible way. We are continuing today with Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, and we are towards the end of the book and we will be finished in a couple of weeks. So, if you have any book recommendations for what we should read next, please feel free to leave them in the comments, or I will probably do what I normally do, make a poll, and you can choose the next book. But I already have a couple of ideas, and I'm just going to chuck one out there. Pride and Prejudice? Let me know what you think. Other than that, if you'd like to support the show, you can go to Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you can support me in making audiobooks more accessible to the masses. And on Patreon, after you give that euro or dollar or whatever your currency of choice is, you'll have access to exclusive audiobooks that you will only find there. So, if that sounds like your thing, support me there. Now, without further ado, let's dive in. Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Chapter 36. As soon as we reckoned everybody was asleep, that night we went down the lightning rod and shut ourselves up in the lean-to and got out a pile of foxfire and went to work. We cleared everything out of the way about 4 or 5 feet along the middle of the bottom log. Tom said he was right behind Jim's bed now, and we'd dig in under it. And when we got through there, couldn't nobody in the cabin ever know there was any hole there, because Jim's counterpin hung down most of the ground, and have to raise it up to look under to see the hole. So we dug and dug, with the case knives, till most midnight, and then we was dog tired, and our hands was blistered, and yet you couldn't see we'd done anything, hardly. At last, I says, "This ain't no 37-year job. This is the 38-year job, Tom Sawyer." He never said nothing, but he sighed, and pretty soon he stopped digging. And then, for a good little while, I knowed he was thinking. Then he says, "It ain't no use, Huck. It ain't gonna work. If we was prisoners, it would, because then we'd have as many years as we wanted, and no hurry. And we wouldn't ever get but a few minutes to dig every night while they was changing watches, so our hands wouldn't get blistered, and we could keep it up right along, year in and year out, and do it right, and the way it ought to be done. But we can't fool along. We gotta rush. We ain't got no time to spare. If we was to put in for another night this way, we'd have to knock off for a week to let our hands get well. Couldn't touch a case knife with them sooner." "Well, then, what are we gonna do, Tom?" "I'll tell you. It ain't right, and it ain't moral, and I wouldn't like it to get out, but there ain't only just the one way. We gotta dig 'em out with picks, and let on it's case knives." "Now you're talking," I says. "Your head gets leveler and leveler all the time, Tom Sawyer," I says. "Picks is the thing, moral or no moral, and as for me, I don't care shucks for the morality of it nohow. When I start in to steal or a watermelon or a Sunday school book, I ain't no ways particular how it's done, so it's done. What I want is my or what I want is my watermelon, or what I want is my Sunday school book. And if a pick's the handiest thing, that's the thing I'm going to dig that or that watermelon or that Sunday school book out with. And I don't give a dead rat what the authority thinks about it, nother." "Well," he says, "there's excuse for picks and letting on in a case like this. If it weren't so, I wouldn't approve of it. Nor would I stand by and see the rules broke. Because right is right and wrong is wrong. And a body ain't got no business doing what's wrong when he ain't ignorant and knows better. It might answer for you to dig Jim out with a pick without letting on, because you don't know no better. But it wouldn't for me, because I know better. Give me case knife." He had his own by his hand, but I handed him mine. He flung it down and says, "Give me a case knife." I didn't know what to do, but then I thought. I scratched around amongst the old tools and got a pickaxe and give it to him, and he took it and went to work and never said a word. He was always just that particular, full of principle. So then I got a shovel. Then we picked and shoveled, turnabout, and made fur fly. We stuck to it about half an hour, which was as long as we could stand up, but we had a good deal of a hole to show for it. When I got upstairs, I looked out the window to see Tom, his level best with the lightning rod. but he couldn't come it. His hands was so sore. At last, he says, "It ain't no use. Can't be done. What do you reckon I better do? Can't you think of no way up?" "Yes," I says, "but I reckon it ain't regular. Come up the stairs and let on it's a lightning rod." So he done it. Next day, Tom stole a pewter spoon and a brass candlestick in the house for to make some pens for Jim out of, and 6 tallow candles. And I hung around the cabins and laid for a chance and stole 3 tin plates. Tom said it wasn't enough, but I said nobody would never see the plates that Jim throwed out because they'd fall in the dog fennel and gypsum weeds under the window hole. Then we could tote them back, and he could use them over again. So Tom was satisfied. And then he says, "And now the thing to study out is how to get the things to Jim." "Take him through the hole," I says, "when we get him done." He only just looked scornful and said something about nobody ever heard of such an idiotic idea. And then he went to studying. By and by, he said he had ciphered out 2 or 3 ways, but there weren't no need to decide on any of them yet. Said we got to post Jim first. That night, we went down the lightning rod a little after 10 and took one of them candles along and listened under the window hole and heard Jim snoring, so we pitched it in, and it didn't wake him. Then we rolled in with the pick and shovel, and in about 2 hours and a half, the job was done. We crept in under Jim's bed and into the cabin, and pawed around and found a candle and lit it, and stood over Jim a while, and found him looking hearty and healthy. Then we woke him up, gentle and gradual. He was so glad to see us he most cried, and called us honey, all the pet names he could think of, and was for having us hunt up a cold chisel to cut the chain off his leg with right away, and clearing out without losing any time. But Tom, he showed him how unregular it would be, and sat down and taught him all about our plans, and how we could alter them a minute any time there was an alarm, and not to be least afraid, because we would see he got away sure. So Jim said it was all right, and we sat there and talked over old times a while. And then Tom asked a lot of questions, and when Jim told him Uncle Silas come in every day or 2 to pray with him, and Aunt Sally come in to see if he was comfortable and had plenty to eat, and both of them was kind as could be, Tom says, "Now I know how to fix it. We'll send you in some things by them." I said, "Don't do nothing of the kind. It's one of the most jackass ideas I ever struck." But he never paid no attention to me. Went right on. It was his way when he got his plan set. So he told Jim how we'd have to smuggle in the rope ladder pie and other large things by Nat, the nigger that fed him. And he must be on the lookout, and not be surprised, and not let Nat see him open them. And we would put small things in Uncle's coat pockets, and he must steal them out. And we would tie things to Aunt's apron strings, or put them in her apron pocket if we got a chance, and told him what they would be and what they was for. And taught him how to keep a journal on the shirt with his blood and all that. He told him everything. Jim couldn't see any sense in the most of it, but he allowed that we was white folks and no better than him. So he was satisfied, and said he would do it all, just as Tom said. Jim had plenty of corncob pipes and tobacco, so we had a right down good sociable time. Then we crawled out through the hole, and so home to bed, with hands that looked like they'd been chawed. Tom was in high spirits, and said it was the best fun he'd ever had in his life, and the most intellectual, and said if he could only see his way to it, we would keep it up all the rest of our lives, and leave Jim to our children to get out. For he believed Jim would come to like it better and better the more he got used to it. He said that in that way it could be strung out to as much as 80 a year, and would be the best time on record. And he said it would make us celebrate it, like that had a hand in it. In the morning, we went out to the woodpile, and chopped up the brass candlesticks into handy sizes, and Tom put them and the pewter spoon in his pocket. Then we went to the neighbor cabins, and while I got Nat's notice off, Tom shoved a piece of candlestick into the middle of a corn pone that was in Jim's pan, and we went along with Nat to see how it would work. And it just worked noble. When Jim bit into it, it most mashed all his teeth out. And there weren't ever anything could have worked better. Tom said so himself. Jim, he never let on that it was only just a piece of rock or something, like that's always getting into bread, you know. But after that, he never bit into nothing but what he jabbed his fork into 3 or 4 places first. And whilst we was standing there, in the diminished light, here comes a couple of hounds bulging in from under Jim's bed, and they kept on piling in there till there was 11 of them, and there weren't hardly room in there to get your breath. By jigs, we forgot to fasten that lean-to door. The next night, he only just hollered, "Witches!" once, and kneeled over to the door among the dogs, and begun to groan like he was dying. Tom jerked the door open and flung out a slab of Jim's meat, and the dogs went for it. And in 2 seconds, he was at himself and back again, and shut the door, and I knowed he'd fix the other door, too. Then he went to work on the nigger, coaxing him and petting him, and asking him if he'd been imagining he saw something again. He raised up and blinked his eyes around and says, "Marcia, you say I was a fool. But if I didn't believe it, I see more than 1,000,000 dogs or devils or something. I wish I may die right here in these tracks. I did, most surely. Marcia, I felt 'em. I felt 'em, sir. They was all over me. I just wish I could get my hand on one of them witches just once, only just once. That's all I ask. But mostly I wish they let me alone, I does." Tom says, "Well, I'll tell you what I think. What makes them come here just at this runaway breakfast time? It's because they're hungry. That's the reason. You make 'em a witch pie. That's the thing for you to do." "But my land, Marcia, how's I gwine make 'em a witch pie? I don't know how to make it. I ain't never heard such a thing before." "Well then, I'll have to make it myself." "Will you do it, honey? Will you? I'll wash up the ground under your feet, I will." "All right, I'll do it. Seeing it's you, and you've been good to us and showed us the runaway. But you gotta be mighty careful. When we come around, you turn your back. Then, whatever we put in the pan, you don't let on you see it at all. Don't look when Jim unloads the pan. Something bad might happen. I don't know what. And above all, don't you handle the witch things." "Handle 'em, Marcia? What is you talking about? I wouldn't lay away my finger on 'em, not for $10,100 billion, I wouldn't." Thank you so very much for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, share, all that jazz. And if you really enjoyed, do subscribe because there is more to come. And if you want to support the show in a more concrete way, you can go to the Patreon, where you'll have access to exclusive audiobooks for as little as €1 a month or $1 a month. And if you're listening on podcast, please leave a review. It really helps get the show in front of as many people as possible, and reading them really makes my day. Once again, thank you very much for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.